I think exactly that. I think the pipeline that you have for your whatever it is, your code, is going to be context specific to that piece of code. So while everything should be roughly the same, you should be building and testing and everything else, and have stuff in version control and everything else. That approximate workflow, that abstract workflow should be roughly the same. The way I build and package and test my infrastructure as code or my application is going to be different to the way that I do it for DB, or the way that I do it for network changes or anything else. So, and third-party integrations as well as that, it's purely on the context of what application what what changes to your platform that you're trying to make.
Richard, agree or disagree?
I kind of agree, but it is about the context. So yes, absolutely I agree. But what the context is often a difficulty, because we've got shared components like obviously infrastructure can be a shared component. Lots of people say it shouldn't be. You've got to tackle that problem by making sure it's not. But we still see integration. We still need to integrate. We still need to get information from one system to another. We still need to get one of my points about the sort of microservices and polyglot persistence and so on. One of my concerns is that other people who are refactoring these autonomous teams who are refactoring the data tier and have different consistency models. That these are all very good, very exciting conversations. But are they talking to the person who's got to deliver the report to the CFO every quarter? One of my concerns is that all these contexts are taken into account at the right time. So when we draw system boundaries, we've got in order to perform that the integration and the deployment especially. So the integration we can build up dependencies, we can build up chain builds in Team City or whatever, and then create the artifacts and know that these are deployable artifacts. In terms of versioning them together and deploying them together, I think that's still a little bit of an unsolved problem, because our system boundaries can change all the time, they're fluid. There are some things you can do with Octopus, and some smart ways of doing tooling, but you don't really want to be going in and repackaging your release groups all the time. So I think we're going to see some evolution in that space. So it is about the context, but context is hard.
So common approach, but possibly different context. Anybody got any questions they want to expand on unified CI pipelines versus kind of questions here?
So, in the previous panel, we had people from different vendors, and we all have to use heterogeneous environments, all these different, if you wish, puzzle pieces to try and build this pipeline. Some people, some applications, developers, some services, whether we're deploying a database, whether we're deploying Active Directory, whether we're deploying a web service, they all have different requirements. And we have to choose different puzzle pieces. And these puzzle pieces feel as if they're for different puzzles. They don't fit together well. They're not replaceable. How do we deal with a pipeline that's full of bits that don't fit together like a nice Jenga system, that feels more like an Etch-a-Sketch that someone's gone mad on?
So,
Gary, do you want to take that one?
I mean, what I would say is, I don't think you're going to find something, there's not going to be one tool to rule them all for the situation you described. I think in the world that we're in just now, I think you have to accept that you are going to need to do some work to make it specific to your workflow and how your company works. You're not going to be able to pick some out of the box, off the shelf product that does everything for you.
Not even IBM who wouldn't know.
I sent from a company who used IBM ClearQuest and ClearCase for everything, because that was the company mantra. Right. So even though we tried to enlighten the company to the newer, better ways of doing it, these tools, they sound good on paper, but as soon as you try and exercise them, I feel you're not going to get what you want from them. So I understand where you're coming from, but what I would say is you just need to give it a try. And and as we've spoken about before, pick the small pieces and start building it together, and slowly build on top of that. If you pick Team City as a CI system and it doesn't work for you, try something else. Don't try and get. There is an element of vendor lock-in that you need to kind of be wary of as well. What I try and do, we would have a build task or a build script rather than use some of the built-in Team City steps or the Jenkins steps. Make it as vendor agnostic as possible so that you can pick it up and move it when you find it isn't working for you the way you want it to. But yeah, there is a little bit of jigsaw pieces to it. I don't think you're going to get away from that, unfortunately, just now.
So James, since IBM invented DevOps 2 years ago, there's now a plethora of unified tools out there that will give us everything we need, right? So why wouldn't we just adopt one of those instead of spending all of this time and effort integrating and gluing together the tools that give us a much better model, especially because we've got open source tooling that we can bring to the mix as well?
Yeah, sure, and as we said, you know, DevOps is all about the tooling, right? So, yeah, I was at a conference a couple of years back, actually about 3 years ago, I think it was, and IBM were one of the sponsors, and there was a kind of on the spot at the beginning of the day. Any one of our sponsors want to have a quick word and say, you know, just plug your product or whatever, and the IBM guy was just kind of put on the spot, and he said, yeah, sure, yeah, if you've got any kind of DevOps stuff, our product will solve it for you. And then we went on to discuss how DevOps is all about culture for the rest of the day. But yeah, it's, you know, so we're talking about CI and CD tools here, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about are glorified scheduled tasks, or glorified cron jobs, if you like. So, you know, these are products that essentially, they kick off a build, and they'll kick off a deployment. And if your solution is you know, a bit of a jigsaw that's got, you know, all these disparate parts, and that's your system, that's what your live ecosystem looks like, you know, a glorified cron job's not going to fix that. It's not going to make it any easier, but it will bring it closer to home. It will help you, you know, find those kind of rough edges and find those problems with deploying into that kind of patchwork environment sooner than deploying into production, and that's the best you can really hope for. But yeah, the open source solutions that are out there, the likes of Jenkins and all the rest, are, you know, they are very rich these days. They've got so many plugins and add-ons, and it's moving quicker than probably the sort of the more sort of painful versions, the professional versions. So yeah, the space is moving so quickly. It seems that as soon as anyone comes up with a good idea, the open space, the equivalent is either ahead or not very far behind. In fact, it seems like the large sort of, say Microsoft, for instance, with their Visual Studio TFS solutions, are actually quite a bit behind the curve in the sense of CI and CD. But yeah, so the open source solutions seem to be almost paving the way and blazing a trail.
I would say that actually I'd go counter to that. Counter to the point you said is actually I want to embrace those changes. I want to embrace the different bits. I want to have a piece that is single purpose. I want to have, you know, I'm not going to use my Jenkins instance or my Team City instance to do all the orchestration pieces for me. I might want to abstract away the alerting piece, for example. You know, I basically want I want single-use pieces that I can use today, that fit my thing today, and if in a month or a year they don't, as you said, I can switch them out to another thing that either is an experiment that might not work and I'll roll back to it, or might be the next greatest tool that I've ever used.
Sorry, my point wasn't that we shouldn't have lots of pieces as single points of responsibility. My problem is I can't switch them out. I can't replace Bamboo with Jenkins easily. They don't overlap. I can't move from Puppet to Ansible easily. There aren't any standards. There aren't any integrations that fit well, and the crossovers, they're bloody painful, and it is the vendor lock-in that kills me every time.
There are, and to be honest, you're never going to move away from that. It's part of the cost of choosing any tool. is the fact that you realise that it's going to live longer than the 5 minutes or a week that it took you to decide to use it. That's just the nature of deploying people's software.
So it's a really interesting point. I mean, we kind of, you know, we light-heartedly jest about being locked into one tool to rule them all, you know, in the case of something like Urban Code. But if we've made that investment into TeamCity or Bamboo, we've made that investment into our source control product, and we've made that investment into our deployment tooling, are we any different than if we just pick one tool? Richard, do you think, or Gary, do you think there are differences?
Well, I think it's interesting what Microsoft are doing now with the VSO Next, though. They're trying to create CI/CD as a platform, using their Azure muscle, of course. And they're promoting at the moment. They did a big thing, splash on this in November, apparently. But they're promoting the fact that you can build your iOS stuff, you can build your Linux stuff from VSO Next. They're bringing in the release tasks, so you've got environment as a first-class concern, so you've got an Octopus deploy type, manageability of environments, you've got better visualizations, which I think are absolutely key. And the integration point might be one of your key confidence builders in this sort of technology to business conversation. It's the thing that, so, you know, we say, what does a pipeline look like? Well, it looks like something is one of the key points. It is a visualization of some underlying complexity, and it is a box of green rectangles with little arrows pointing in one direction. So they can, when you point to a red one, you know, that means something, and you can have that conversation. So I think, but getting back to the point, I don't think that we're going to see one tool to rule them all, but if Microsoft, with their big user base and their Azure muscle, are able to push this idea of CI/CD as a platform, and fine, if you want to use TeamCity within that, fine, okay, have your TeamCity create a package and put that into the repository, ready for deployment by VSO, vNext, then I think we might see something that's a bit more of an integration piece. Maybe not the one we want, but maybe a bit more of one.
The trouble with that particular Microsoft solution is they're coming to the game so late. And they're now going to release something that we've kind of already cobbled together with all the open source materials. So most people who are trying to do this right, trying to do continuous delivery, have had to come up with a solution already. If you wanted to do continuous delivery in the Microsoft world, you're probably already using TeamCity or Bamboo or Jenkins or something else. And now Microsoft are going to come with this fantastic solution. But who's going to back out from their already working system and go, well, let's go with Microsoft? Okay, it's got first-class integration with Azure, but it's not hard to integrate stuff with Azure.
The why not Microsoft shops?
Yeah.
The 19 directive says you've all got to say why not Microsoft.
Yeah, the cost of moving.
Does anybody kind of live in one of those organisations at the moment where why not Microsoft, or is that
just
yeah?
One thing about that, let's say Microsoft used to have another solution that was a build system of TFS, and it just was a giant XML, and no one was actually using that. It was actually shit to use it, but even Microsoft recognized that and created a new one from scratch. Say, don't stop using this shit. But again, it's not that they are late in the market, just decided, again, it's a new Microsoft, they decided this was not good enough, we are not going to create a new language to actually make you do your build. So if you were doing your builds correctly, that was like creating a lot of templates that actually cron CMDs that actually, or make files that actually do your build. It's easy to switch from one solution to another one. It's just a point of what are you using to actually do the build of a project. If you are using make files, that's the way that I would suggest anyone to actually be building any solution. It would be easier to actually move between these any platform that you actually have for these continuous integrations.
That was sort of a point I was going to make towards, although we use TeamCity in-house, our TeamCity build configuration is one step. And that one step, in our case, is using Saki as a scripting engine. So, although you have an element of ease of getting up and running with a continuous integration server, a continuous deployment server, if you find yourself using, or in my opinion, if you find yourself using more and more of the built-in templates, like it's so easy just to say in TeamCity, update assembly info files, or run the solution build, or deploy to here. I can't do that on my own developer machine because I don't have Team City on my machine. So I would argue that you want your build process to be as close to on the developer machine as it is on the CI server, because you're just running it in a different place, making sure that it runs the way you want it to run. So there is things you can do to kind of avoid the vendor lock-in. Obviously, if you're already there, it's not that easy, but as you start using these tools, just be mindful of where the boundaries are in terms of making it easy to move if you need to.
That's a really good point. You want to be very careful about adding too much configuration into your CI tools, for instance, your Team City, Bamboo, and Jenkins, and what have you. If you find that you're having inside Bamboo you've got a load of scripting, maybe you want to ask yourself, is that worth just taking that out and put that in a script file itself and source control that script file? Then you are kind of becoming slightly more tool agnostic. So if you do want to move to Jenkins, then it is just a case of calling that script file, passing in whatever parameters.
I think it's organisation dependent as well. So, there's always going to be the case of companies that want to buy the DevOps and have a tool that just does everything for them, and they're happy with that lock-in because they get support for it. They can phone someone up and it's fine and that works for them. There's always going to be that, and then there's going to be the organisations that want to chip away, that want to write their own plugins, write their own integrations. Use this part of the tool but not this other part and everything else. And there's benefits and drawbacks to that. I'd say one on one side is the support model and the stability. The other side of that is that you don't. You might have a feature that you then have to, wait another 6 months for the next release to get, and so on. So it depends upon the taste for it in your organisation.
Because especially because we've got to go from Redgate on the stage, but I was going to ask, you found that the CI tooling chain is fairly mature now for code, YS sites, Chef doing server builds. In some ways we're finding weak links around SQL. SQL data. I know that Redgate recently bought Area Credible, which means that you can wrap things in the NuGet version control package and push it through the CI pipeline. But we still, find that a bit of a pain to work with. Right? So I was kind of just interested in panels for, is SQL the weak link in the CI tool chain, and what approaches, have you taken to, allow CI to really work, with data schema deployments?
It often is, it can be, and it often is. I mentioned there's got some unique problems. There are the dependencies that people accept in their data tier that they wouldn't accept elsewhere in their software. These evolve over time. I think it's also a historical point. A lot of certainly Windows-centric organisations have started off with a database and started to build where they knew how to build, which was stored procedures, which was getting that data into an Excel spreadsheet. And the SQL database in a lot of organisations is the last place that really needs the cobwebs clearing out. So it's not really susceptible to, it's not amenable to continuous integration. We tried to do that in several ways. I mean, you mentioned ReadyRoll. That's for, Redgate acquired that really because they wanted a solution for people who straight away wanted to work in Visual Studio, where our other products aren't quite as well supported, and also they wanted a migrations-only approach for people who wanted to have scripted change files. And then it goes into the NuGet package, and then it's part of that CD process, and Oxford deploy picks it up. So we've been doing that for a while with our state-based model. We use SQL source control in SQL Server Management Studio, then do the builds using our tools for our automation suite with plugins for Team City and Jenkins and the rest of it. That also builds a NuGet package, so it's kind of similar concern, and that's been around for a while. So the problems, the cross-database dependencies, the linked servers, the legacy code, the business code that belongs elsewhere, sitting in SQL Server database stored procedures, which are an absolute bane of our lives. A lot of our customers they're interested in our products, but find them very hard to implement because they've got a lot of data architecture work to do before they can really get there. There are other particular problems like the system boundary bleeds over into environment-specific concerns, like I mentioned, logins, having your logins at the SQL Server having users associated with logins in your SQL Server database makes that boundary slightly problematic. So it's one of the last pieces to be sorted in terms of CI/CD, but there are things you can do. There is a lot of it's about data architecture. So whether some people say see that as breaking down the monoliths, others say just getting that business logic out, abstracting those into services, and getting your contact with the database to be from a service layer down and never sideways. So I'm trying to help with that, and we spent a lot of time talking to people about how to do that. So
there's another question over here. Is it a follow-on from that, or
just thinking about I've been using the full end-to-end Microsoft solution. It is really exciting. I think go back to this idea of culture with Microsoft. Obviously, I suppose for you guys and for a lot of us who've gone through setting up our tool chains, that's being pain and suffering and woe until we get to end-to-end and we've got it right. But I think what Microsoft now is stepping in is they're going to create something for those who are a couple of years behind the cycle. How do they start thinking about it? How complex it fits end-to-end? And actually, they're going to say, well, we give the support service. How does it fit into either Azure or into your on-prem services? And that means that organisations that are not yet looking in this space might be pushed in a way that Microsoft must already support it. And I think it's a big part of the culture. People are comfortable, they've got 10 years worth of .NET development material right in front of them. Do they want to go into this crazy open source world entirely? Probably not. Do they want to be parts of it? I think that's what Microsoft is trying to solve and actually engage in the open source world.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept then. So on the Microsoft Next Gen tooling is for essentially greenfield products only. Is that something we agree with as a panel? And do we know enough about that tooling to think maybe, or do you think from what you've seen there, trying to engage in market and retrofit this stuff? What are the gaps if they're...
I think that Microsoft have started to develop a really interesting ecosystem. I love what they're doing with Azure. And I like what VSO looks like. I think they've still got that habit, that Microsoft habit of doing those big releases once every now and then, which kind of get them up to speed with everyone else, and then they just continuously get a little bit behind the curve. But that's going to change. You can see the change coming with Microsoft now. They're far more embracing of open source culture. They seem to have stopped trying to reinvent all the cool stuff that the open source world has, and just embrace it instead and support it. So what they did have with TFS originally was this fantastic integrated system, an end-to-end integrated system. All the component parts of it were crap, but it was integrated. And that was the convenience of it. But now people are looking for best of breed advantages in all of the component parts, and they just can't keep up. So now they're making really neat integrations with the open source equivalents like the Gits of this world. And I think that's nice. I think it's good. I think it's brave too.
I was going to say it's a good point in the question also that there are plenty of people who are late to the party, and Microsoft aren't necessarily being dumb about that. There's a huge